Hey everybody, welcome back for another Mad Panic game review, and today we've got something very special on offer. It's a game that I thought I knew exactly what it was going to be at a glance, but after playing it realized it's so much more than I initially thought, and that is the one, the only Berserk Boy. This game is the debut title of the aptly named Berserk Boy Games, and it's published by Big Sugar, and if that sounds familiar, that's because they've published some other outstanding indie titles, such as Trifox and a personal favorite of mine, the very awesome Valfaris. I received a review code for this game courtesy of Berserk Boy Games and Lost in Cult, so thank you very much for that because I had a great time with Berserk Boy, and if you're a fan of retro-inspired action platformers, this is one that you'll probably want to check out. So enough with the preamble, let's take a closer look at Berserk Boy and see what makes it so special. Upon first glance at the artwork, trailers, and other promotional materials for Berserk Boy, I assumed it was going to be more or less a Mega Man clone. Some of the advertising even describes it as being a cross between Mega Man and Sonic the Hedgehog, which is admittedly an intriguing concept, and also the Archie Comics crossover I never knew I wanted, but I've played plenty of Mega Man clones before, and they never live up to the series they seek to emulate. I'm happy to say, though, that this is definitely more than just your run-of-the-mill Mega Man clone. In fact, with a few exceptions, Berserk Boy doesn't really play all that similar to Mega Man. There are definitely a lot of aesthetic similarities, but honestly, the core gameplay gave me more of a Pulse Man vibe, if anyone has ever played that old Sega gem. The story revolves around a resistance force fighting against an evil scientist named Dr. Genos, who is using powerful artifacts called Berserk Orbs to, what else? Take over the world.
Of course!
The Berserk Orbs grant radical powers to whoever is in possession of them, and Dr. Genos has used a bunch of them to give his various henchmen destructive elemental abilities. Luckily for the Resistance, though, one of their young recruits named K is able to fuse with a Berserk Orb that imbues him with some radical electrical-based powers, thus becoming the titular Berserk Boy. Accompanied by his brainy gal pal Dizzy and a talking bird named Fiore, he sets out to bring down Dr. Genos' army and save the world. So your starting power set is your electrical abilities, which allow for quick dashing and shock attacks that can be used in unison, and fast-paced platforming lies at the center of the gameplay. Your shock dash is not only useful for clearing big gaps, but it's also your primary attack. And it's powerful enough to take out weaker enemies in one shot, and for stronger enemies, it grants you a lock-on attack that can shock them into oblivion. As you progress through each stage, you'll pick up lots of little blue spheres that serve two purposes. One is that they refill your energy meter, which is needed to use certain special abilities, but they also act as the game's currency, which you'll need in order to buy various upgrades, such as increasing your max health or unlocking some new offensive and platforming abilities. Finally, you have a super power meter, so to speak, that when full allows you to perform a devastating super attack that can either take out a bunch of enemies all at once or deal some big damage to bosses. Eventually, you'll encounter Dr. Genos' Berserk-powered henchmen for a one-on-one battle, and this is where the Mega Man similarities come into play. After defeating each of them, you absorb their Berserk Orb, which grants you a whole new suit of armor complete with a variety of abilities of its own. Far from just granting you a new attack, though, each suit has functions that are needed to progress further into the game, such as being able to burrow underground in the fire suit or hang from ledges and use quick boost icons in the ice suit. They do of course also come with unique attacks of their own, which come in handy against various enemies, and each suit also unlocks a whole host of potential power-ups to go with it. I found that the electrical suit was the most useful overall and usually did the trick with bosses but the other suits definitely serve a purpose. You can even backtrack to previously cleared stages to use your new abilities to find hidden items and rescue stranded resistance members. Overall, I found the gameplay in Berserk Boy to be very fun. The controls are responsive and the action is fast-paced and eventually became quite challenging. After unlocking a few different suits, the game will start throwing sections at you that require quickly switching back and forth between them to use the various abilities needed to clear some rather tricky platforming segments, which I found to be very enjoyable. You do have the option of playing with or without unlimited continues, which I'm happy I did, because this game did kick my ass a time or two. I reiterate though that I went into Berserk Boy expecting just another Mega Man clone and instead found a game with an identity all its own, and I thoroughly enjoyed the gameplay. Gameplay aside, this is also a good looking and sounding game, but I'd say the soundtrack more so than the graphics had me impressed. There is some terrific music in Berserk Boy that adds a lot to each stage and boss fight, and the entire soundtrack is composed by T. Lopez. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because he's worked on some absolutely amazing games these past few years, including the soundtracks for Sonic Mania and TMNT Shredder's Revenge. There's a bit of voice work here and there too, which is okay, but the music is definitely the highlight. The visuals are quite nice too, very colorful with plenty of detail in each stage and some great character designs, but on the other hand, not exactly mind-blowing if you've played a lot of retro-styled modern games as of late. Still, not a bad-looking game at all, and it runs great. Again, no complaints in terms of visuals, and 2 giant gorilla thumbs up for the music. So that's Berserk Boy in a nutshell, a fast-paced and fun action platformer with some slick retro-style graphics and a world-class soundtrack. I had a lot of fun with it, and I can easily recommend this game to anyone with an appreciation for old-school platformers. I was legitimately surprised by just how good this game is. I expected a run-of-the-mill Mega Man clone, and I got a great game with its own unique identity. I'm definitely looking forward to the next game from this developer, and I'll certainly be playing through this one again. It's Berserk Boy, and it's awesome. Awesome!